I want to talk about the investigation into the New Georgia Project. And for those of you who may not know, the New Georgia Project was put together by Stacey Abrams. It was Senator Raphael Warnock. He was chairman of the project, and what it was a project to get disenfranchised members of the state of Georgia registered to vote. And what we saw was a blue swing in Georgia in this past presidential and senatorial elections, right? And what this tells us is that Georgia's not the only state who suffers from this, but there are many other states who have people who should vote and don't vote. Who should vote, don't have the enthusiasm to vote, or don't have to give a damn about voting, right? And what this project did was it got some of those people registered and got them to the polls. Now, an investigation is coming out because 1,268 applications were not turned in within the 10-day window. So from the time that you fill out your registration application, they have 10 days to get that sent off to get you registered to vote. Apparently, this didn't happen. We're dealing with tens of thousands of applications. Sometimes shit happens. But the way the article painted it out to be was that fraudulent activity was happening. And don't get me wrong, do I think that all elections are clean and fair? Absolutely not. But I also think there's a level of voter suppression that's happening in this country that is not okay. For one, why is there a deadline from the time that you fill out an application until the time for that to get turned in for you to be an eligible voter? Why? I can understand deadlines for when that application needs to be in to the state, but why is there a barrier from the time that you fill out an application, especially with an organization that you're not filling out directly on your own to turn in at the voting office yourself? Why is there a deadline? It tells me that you want to retain power and you don't want other people to have power, which means you don't want other people to vote, right? And you're afraid that if these other people get the opportunity to vote, they won't vote for you. So instead of trying to make voting harder, why don't you create better candidates? Why don't you create better platforms? Why don't you be a better person to vote for? Now, all this is doing is painting Senator Warnock as an incapable senator. Now, mind you, the two previous senators from the state of Georgia, one was doing both were doing shady business using like Kelly Loeffler used information from being a part of the Senate pre or during COVID to make business decisions on the outside. And Purdue has made questionable business decisions, has been investigated for those as well. So what are we doing here? Are we actually trying to expose voters for being fraudulent or people who aren't voting? Or are we just trying to weaken someone who's going to be up for a re-election in 2022 because he got in on a special election? So he has to go back and run again. Is that what we're doing here? Because I find it interesting that now all of a sudden we're looking into these things because it didn't go a certain group's way. And the funny thing about Georgia is the Georgia State Assembly versus what's represented at the national, at the federal level is totally different. If you listen to the way the entire state of Georgia talks versus the way the metropolitan areas talk, it's totally different. And I find it so interesting because it seems like, oh my God, Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, they're janky, they're disgusting, they've been doing awful things here. But I don't know. What it is it's a power structure that's losing their power. They go, oh my God, we don't have representation at the federal level. We have to do all that we can to fix it. And in the great Georgia way, what do? We suppress the voters. We don't get better. We don't figure out what our people need because that's not what politicians do. Politicians are politicking for themselves, not for the people. See, it's like, hold on, let me represent my values and find enough people who like my values so that I can represent them. Instead of, here are my values, here's what I represent. Here are the people that I aim to represent. What do they stand for? Oh, y'all stand for this? Okay, so I need to adjust myself. So even if this is not something I believe in, I am making the decisions for those that I represent. So sometimes I got to take a back seat to that. But no, politicians want to get reelected. They work to get reelected. They don't work for the people. And that's where we find ourselves. I'm not even going to say it's a faulty investigation. It's probably legitimate. I don't question the legitimacy of the investigation given the information. I question the legitimacy of the investigation because why the hell is this even an investigation? Like, what are we investigating right now? Are you serious? Like, they didn't turn in the voter registration applications on time. That's the same thing as the people who say, all the votes need to be turned in on voting day. Why? What changes? What if somebody, mailed in their vote on the day that everyone else cast their ballot, but it shows up 3 days later? You still voted. You're still a registered voter. You're still part of the voting population. But we put these hurdles in the way, put these restraints in the way just so that the people in power can keep the power instead of representing the people.